How do you keep your skills-based learning moving at the same pace as technology is developing? Is AI part of your thought process or action plan when it comes to talent transformation? If it is, how do you balance the technological advances with the human needs? Joining me to discuss these challenges, exploring multi-generational differences and how to lead with compassion, is Sarmista Mondol. Welcome to In Good Company, Sarmista. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you for this opportunity.
Well, it's a delight to have you here, and we're excited to get into today's topic. But before we do that, I'd like to give our audience the opportunity to get to know you a little bit better. So, if you could tell us about yourself in 60 seconds, that would be great.
Not sure 60 seconds or not, but yes. So learning is very core to me. So I started as a lecturer long back when I used to teach literature and English language to students at university. And then I moved to corporate learning, and I have been there since then. I've worked in different consulting organizations, supporting clients on talent strategy, etc. But learning is not only for others, but also I believe learning comes naturally to me. In the sense, I'm always excited about new technologies, trying to make things kind of simpler for the organization, how I can improve things, and learning that. So that also comes very naturally to me. So that's very me. But also something which inspires me is seeing how I have been able to make an impact in the organization, in an employee's life, in a person who's struggling with something. So that is something which is me. And right now, I've been in IBM for almost a decade now. Never thought I would complete a decade, but that's the longest stint I've had in an organization, but played multiple roles. Right now, in IBM, I look after IBM Garage in the APAC region, but also help clients in their talent transformation journey. So that's me.
Well, we're going to explore a wealth of experience with you today, I'm sure, and we're excited to get into it. The kind of two key areas that we wanted to talk to you about today, on paper, they can seem potentially contradictory. So we're really interested to kind of see how the conversation develops and where you see the intersections between AI and its place in talent development and, I guess, compassionate leadership. So moving straight into that then, let's talk about one of the biggest buzzwords we're hearing at the moment, which is GenAI. First off, I mean, based on what you've already been saying about your enjoyment of new technologies, I would say that I already maybe know the answer to this, but what would you say? Does AI have a place in transforming talent development? If so, what do you think are some of the exciting ways you've seen it applied?
Absolutely. I am a big believer in AI and GenAI, and we are already doing it, and not only in IBM, but also helping our clients with it. First, before we even go there, it's very important to understand that AI is not going to potentially take away your jobs. Right now, what we see is AI as a collaborator, how you can use AI to make jobs easier for you, to become a better version of the work you do. So that is an extremely important thing, how you collaborate with this new technology. And you asked me a question on how is it transforming talent development. So at IBM, and we are a consulting organization, so we have created a lot of assets or assistants for our consultants. So what do these assistants actually do? For example, you want to speak with a pharma client, and you have to create a presentation, and you haven't worked in the sector for some time. So how do you actually get that research? So use these assistants effectively to make this research time shorter for you, even to help you with creating presentations on the detail level of actually going and figuring out that what would be a potential IBM solution which would be helpful for this particular client. Also do a scanning of the entire entire industry. So all that is pretty much available to you and helps you prepare and helps you become a better consultant. And that is something which we are doing, and that is actually transforming learning. In the sense that there was a time where people used to say, Google is the greatest LMS of all time. You go to Google for any kind of questions you have. But herein, I'm talking at an organizational level, if you had to, there would be a time when you would have to scan through different learning, say, I want to learn about this industry, banking, pharma, then go through several reports. But here, this assistant is actually helping you learn, prepared, and in the flow of your work. You don't have to get out somewhere, learn about something, and then apply. It's actually happening in the flow of work, and ultimately, you are becoming more and more effective. So that's how it's transforming.
And I suppose what we were talking about there was what we've covered a lot there is about the change that AI is bringing, and we hear that headline a lot about the will AI take our jobs or take jobs, and so it was really interesting to hear from your perspective that AI won't, and that was quite a bold statement, I thought, because of course there is a genuine concern on people's minds about AI, and I think that learning piece is super important, isn't it? About making sure that you are best equipped with your own learning about what AI actually is, let alone how to use it and how it works, or to the better. And it is available out there to learn that. So making sure that people ask questions and finding out what it can do, what it is there to do, and how it can support you is as important as what it can actually do in the first place. We mentioned there about how AI is bringing change, and I think that will be different for all of us and for many organizations. Undoubtedly, there'll be that thought on the practical technological changes. What if any, the cultural shifts do you think that organizations need to make to successfully adapt to and adopt AI?
Mm-hmm. Very important question, because one of the things which we talked about is people are, of course, threatened. They think that AI is going to take away the jobs, but that is not really likely. So, really, first step for an organization is to start the journey, the AI, the automation, the GenAI journey. That's important, because if you don't today, somebody is going to disrupt you tomorrow. Right. So that's very important for different organizations to start their journey. That's important. But also empowering and enabling your entire organizations, your employees, to understand that, hey, this is good for you. This is good for you. This is not something which you should be anxious about. And that's how your journey starts. But of course, you need to really understand if a technology is helping you out at scale. So what we do at IBM, when we work with clients who are interested in starting the journey, we help them with short, smaller pilots so they can actually experience the technology and see how it actually works for them. So I think this is the cultural shift we are looking at, is really starting the journey, but also helping your organization at large to, be in this journey with you. That is something which we're looking at, and then start small. Look, because there are so many other implications. There'll be security implications. There'll be all these things which you need to consider. So when you actually start deploying any new technology. So yes, this is something which is, I think, which most organizations need to do, like literally today.
Yeah, it's true. And I think it kind of all starts with conversation, doesn't it? And finding out where AI can fit into an organization,
Yes.
Which then, of course, can move into the how it does.
Yes.
So yeah, and as part of that, I think that the people side of things is one of the most important aspects of that. And I know from the research we've done and asking you to come on this podcast was that you're a firm believer in the power of compassion when it comes to creating sustainable networks and mentoring. So let's hear more about that from you then. So what does compassionate leadership mean to you, and why is it important?
So if somebody tells me that to define compassion or compassionate leadership, perhaps there is no kind of a solid definition to it. I can't say, Dan, because you're this, because you're this, because you're this, that's why you're a compassionate leader. But again, if somebody is growing in the organization in his or her career, I think it's very natural that you not only think about the individual self, which is myself, but also think about being committed to your organization, to your team, to the growth of your team, to the success of your teams, and ultimately also to the larger society. So that is something what compassion is all about. How you do go about that, because there will be a time, of course, when you're starting your journey, you're going to think about yourself. How do I go to the next step? How do I become a manager, etc.? But there will be a time when, of course, you're thinking about yourself. You're thinking about targets, how to drive success, etc. in the organization, but also how do others drive it for you? So those are the things which will enable you to be, there are small actions which kind of contribute to you becoming a more compassionate leader. The main thing is going beyond the self and thinking about the larger community. That is what makes you more compassionate.
And how do you recommend, or what advice would you give, practical steps perhaps that leaders can help develop that compassion into their leadership style? What advice would you give there?
Dan, it is quite difficult, especially if you are very senior, because there'll be targets which you have to, reach. You have to ensure that the organization is growing. But how do you actually block some time out over there on coaching? Be it coaching, be it mentoring people, being it and going and speaking to students. So that is something which you have to do consciously. Blocking out time, managing your time exclusively for these kinds of, forward-looking or outward-looking, initiatives. But also spending time with team members, not only your team members, but from different parts of the world, having those conversations. So people not only, people can actually engage with you, understand, take away tips from you, but also you also get the vibe of what others are feeling, what others are thinking. But I think it is also a two-way process in one way, where you are giving yourself, giving your learnings to others, but also when you have this conversation, you also understand the pulse of your employees, of your team, and I think those are the things when you have. You may have experienced this, like an inspiring conversation can do a lot to create more engaged employees. So it's a two-way process. While you're giving this time to your employees, to your team members, but ultimately it is working in your favor to create a more engaged organization.
I've been thinking a lot there whilst you've been speaking, and how the compassionate leader a compassionate leadership style is a very human leadership style. A lot of there's so many human qualities to that, and of course, there's that a lot of what you've said there comes through reflection, feedback, as you say, conversation, being curious. A lot of these things might not necessarily come natural to people, to leaders, and that will take considerable effort to learn, practice, and hone their skills. Do you think, therefore, based on what we've talked about, and that being an innately human aspect to leadership, if we come to rely on AI if we get to a point where we rely on AI, what's the potential risks there to this type of leadership, if any? It might be that I might be putting words into your mouth there, but just kind of looking at those, the sort of the watch outs, I guess, for relying too much on AI to kind of hone human skills.
I think it's going to become more and more relevant, to be very frank. So when we were growing up, of course, we didn't have a smartphone. I grew up in the 80s and 90s. We didn't have the smartphone. We didn't have internet for most of the time. And now we used to go out to, if we had to have any food, we used to go out to get it ourselves. But now everything is available on the app. Right. So the human interactions have actually become very less. I think with technology, with AI, etc., it's going to be further less. But what becomes more essential and critical are these human skills I can talk about. I think so. Again, speaking with someone, and if you go back to the COVID days, and when we were all trapped in our homes, and we had to virtualize a lot of our programs because
Yeah.
learning has to go on, right?
Yeah.
And interestingly, that is the time when we hit record high NPSs, because people used to look forward to engaging with people and
Yeah.
cohorts coming together and interacting, and they just wanted people to just see others' faces because they were all trapped. Yeah, and that is very, and that's what it's very important to understand, that as technology we become more and more reliant on technology. So these human skills, core skills, will become more and more important, and the uh, the entire importance of a compassionate leader will become extremely critical in days to come. And one of the very important things is, these skills don't come naturally to many. You have to hone those skills.
Yeah.
And I think organizations would need to invest on honing these kinds of skills. We may not call it compassionate leader, but servant leader, or whatever it is. That is something which will be more and more critical, and we have to build these leadership skills.
Yeah, well, obviously, I'm slightly biased in the company that I work for, and obviously, there's a tagline behind me that, that without doing a shameless plug, but yes, we wholeheartedly agree with you there. And it was a really lovely way that you brought together that thinking around, yes, okay, there's an abundance of rapidly changing technology out there that's just continuously and exponentially changing the way that we interact with technology and use it for our daily lives. But ultimately, when push comes to shove, I think you articulated it beautifully there, of when we look at COVID, we were all pushed into a virtual lifestyle, and yet we were yearning for that human connection. And that brings that sense of hope that ultimately, as no matter where we go technologically, there'll still be that desire and need for human connection, because that's what we are. We are humans after all. So yeah, I thought that was beautiful the way you described that. So thank you for sharing that. I wanted to also ask about your experience. You talked in your introduction about mentoring students across in universities across Singapore and India. The experience that you've got from there, what do you think is going to be crucial for students and people moving into their careers and starting their careers? What kind of leadership and behavioral skills do you think are crucial for them, given what we talked about today, to most effectively build those skills as they transition into the workplace?
Yes, I do mentor students, and I think it's like a refreshing kind of thing for me. It's like a refreshing break. When after, in fact, today after this, I will actually go back, and I have a call with some of my students there. So yes, I really look forward to those sessions. But what are the skills which they should focus on, and to seamlessly kind of integrate in the workforce? I think that's the question which you wanted to ask. First, of course, technical skills or functional skills are important. I mean, whatever degrees you're getting, be it computer science, be it engineering, those are important skills. But we talked about core skills. That is the key differentiator, because when you are being interviewed, those are the critical skills which is going to differentiate somebody else from you. Of course, your grades and those, that matters, how you code. In fact, I mean, that matters. But how you collaborate with others, how you work with different groups of people who may not be of your from the same country, who may not be of the same age group as you are. How do you solve problems? How do you think? Those are the skills, I think, are very, very important. And it is very important not only for universities and schools and colleges to kind of integrate these kinds of teachings, these kinds of subjects, the way people think, the way people solve problems, the way people work, collaborate, that should be in the curriculum. But also, which we already is happening, collaborating with organizations from early on, so that people can get the flavor of what work is all about. Because the way children are brought up right now is so different. They get a little more dependent. Families are small. There was a time when there used to be so many kids in the family, especially if I'm talking from somebody who grew up in India. But families have become smaller, so the focus is on this child. But when you go to the workplace, it's a very different environment. You will not have this very comfort zone of people trying to protect you, your parents trying to protect you. You have to get used to that. So at one level is, of course, integrating all these kinds of skills in your holistic kind of growth, but also going to the real situation, going and taking up those internship, going at colleges and schools, coming together and getting students in an organization like IBM or any other organization to see what actual working is all about. Because that these are the things which is going to help students integrate very well in the workplace.
I think that's absolutely right, and I suppose a question that is related to that is, what advice would you give to kind of flip that coin, advice to any leaders that are welcoming new students into the workplace and therefore have a multi-generational workforce? What advice would you give to leaders that they could maybe act on tomorrow to help lead in that environment?
Yes. So not only lead, perhaps what you're trying to say is, how can organizations help this generational workforce kind of grow in the organization, help in their learning needs, etc., and build leaders as such? Yes, that's a very important question again, because we need to understand that the age group, again, there'll be employees in their 20s, there'll be employees in their 40s and 50s also, employees in their 20s, very hungry, employees in the 20s, quite, they're very excited. They want to do so many new things. Whereas employees in their 40s and 50s, aging parents, they have children to take care of, and they have project teams to manage as well. It's a very different dynamic.
Sure.
And so kind of taking into account this whole ecosystem and creating learning journeys for them is very important, and use technology extremely effectively to understand what are the skill gaps in your organization. How do you curate these learning journeys for different individuals? Because what learning requirement I have as an individual, you may have a different requirement. You may be this person who is very ambitious, wants to take up a new role next year, but I may be this person who wants to stay in this role and grow in this role. So my learning journey is going to be very different from yours, right? So using technology effectively, but most importantly, I think, as far as learning and development is concerned in an organization, while you're aware of this different dimensions in the organization and customize different interventions, but it is very important to understand, are you making an impact at all? So that should be the philosophy of your learning and development, programs, because ultimately you may be spending dollars, but are you actually making an impact? Are your it doesn't matter, okay, how many learning hours your employees are consuming, they're completing, but at the end of the day, what is the impact you're making? That should be a core, part of your learning and development philosophy. Yes.
It was such a fantastic answer that I feel like you've really summarized what compassionate leadership is, because you've essentially hit the nail on the head there of like thinking about everybody's world, thinking about the worlds that they are in, the places they're in their lives. So it's not just a standardized approach for learning in an organization. I think that approach can be, I mean, if that was thought about more in bigger organizations, not only that, but also maybe in governments as well, the world would be a totally different place. And so I think that was a really great way of summarizing everything we've talked about there, especially as we talked about the technology and embracing the technology as well to make that work for you. So yeah, I mean, we knew you were the right person for this. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. Before I let you go, because we have reached time, I'd like to ask you our final question that we ask all of our guests, which is it's a bit more of a personal question, and it's to get you to reflect, I guess, on your own career and take a moment to kind of take that sort of reflective pause. So if you were to start your career again, knowing what you know now, what would be the advice that you would give your younger self?
So as I said, Dan, I grew up in the 80s and 90s India. So at that point, women's empowerment, women's education is very, very important. And we used to have all these government, programs showcasing that. So I knew that I wanted to work in an office. I didn't know what I want to do. Right. So that's, that was the time we always saw, of course, women as teachers, women in the government, public sector, but also slowly women's coming and start joining the IT workforce. Then they start joining the private banking. Private banking started around the 90s in India. So, so those kinds of things, that's where I grew up. But if I have to give an advice to myself, I think I would have done the same mistakes. I would have been the rebel, which I was. I would have made the same friends, which I did. But I think if I have to give one small tip, I think I would have asked my younger self to be a little more fearless, challenging norms. That's something which I would have, given. That's a tip which I would have given. Or else I think I would have done the same mistakes, same friends. And yeah, I would have I think I have no regrets.
Well, that's a great way of looking at it. And usually I ask the question of do you live by that same advice now? Would you say you live by that advice?
In the sense, if I am going to, question norms.
I think by the sounds of it, you certainly do. I mean, would you say you take that many risks? Are we still? Yes. Yeah, excellent.
Yes. I do. And I think I'm very fortunate to be in an organization which actually, encourages people to go out there, take risk, try this technology well. You will fail, but maybe you'll fail faster. But that's something which we are encouraged to do. So yes.
Absolutely. We're so aligned on that. We embrace those mistakes because ultimately they're learning opportunities. So yeah, we're fully on board with you there. Well, Sarmista, that's been amazing. Thank you ever so much for giving us your time and expertise and insights into what we've talked about today. I've certainly learned loads, and I could ask you loads more questions, but sadly we are running out of time. But thank you ever so much again for giving us your time. So that just leaves me to say thank you once again to Sarmista for sharing all of her insights and thoughts today. And if you would like to find out anything more about Sarmista or myself or Impact, you'll find all of the links that you need in the description of where you found today's episode. Of course, there is the back catalogue, which if you've not watched or listened to yet, you'll find all of those links there too. So thanks once again to Sarmista, and thank you from me. And until the next time, take care.